Thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time out of your day to attend this session. This is another webinar as part of the ISV webinar series with Wiise. So I guess talk and introduce why we're all here today. Feedback that we get from the Wiise Partner Network and even from customers in general is that reporting is key and that there's always been a further need for insights and analysis to be able to retrieve the data from solutions such as Wiise and being able to make it meaningful, but as well as that, give it action for our customers and our users. For those purposes today, I'll be covering the Wiise side from Carl, but introducing a key ISV that we think that can really help our customers and our partners specifically in this space, and that is Sharperlight. And from Sharperlight, I've got both Jeff and Donald today. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having us. So I'm Jeff. I'm the Asia Pacific Business Development Manager. Sharperlight is considered a self-service reporting tool. So look, we connect into a number of different platforms, Wiise and BC being one of them, and KeyPay. And effectively, it's agnostic with the way it functions, and you query from multiple systems into different presentation layers, such as Excel, a web browser with web reports and dashboards, Power BI, and Microsoft Teams. And that's really at the core of it, being able to pull that meaningful data, as you mentioned, present it in multiple different layers very quickly, because look, we're a performance-driven bit of software. And that's sort of where we class ourselves, and that's where it begins, is at performance.
That's brilliant. There was a couple of key areas that you mentioned there that naturally are all part of the suite of solutions that Wiise plays in. But as well as that, yeah, it's a key point that we want to make the data meaningful for the end users and present it to them in different methods and ways so they can see it. There's also a key component that we talked about leading up to this session regarding to bringing in that data from a legacy system. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. We'll get into that in the demo too, where we can sort of show parking an old system, being able to report from an old system and either migrate it into a system like Wiise or BC very quickly with the write back functionality, or parking that old system and putting Sharperlight over the top, without the need to continue to pay for licensing with that old system. So we'll get into that and show you how it all fits together.
Very good. Let's begin.
Okay, beautiful. Look, thank you for the introduction. I think we've now been involved with the Wiise and BC ecosystem for over a year and a half. Look, we've seen some really phenomenal growth. Sharperlight began this journey with BC and Wiise in March 2020 as some of our existing partners continued to bring up BC opportunities time and time again. And it was just a no-brainer as a number of our partners were having performance issues with Jet and really wanted an easy solution to use and deploy. So look, we're really excited to give you a high-level overview of what Sharperlight is, how it comes together, the features and functionality as sort of we just discussed before, what's available to you as a partner when partnering with us for free, and what the consulting advantages are, and how you can empower your customers, consultants to make more money across the board. I'll give you a little bit of a backstory of Sharperlight. Sharperlight has been globally established for over 14 years, since 2008. So the product has come such a long way. It's just such a testament to always wanting to receive feedback and drive the best possible solution on the market. So our headquarters is out of Perth with another office out of UK for support and sales. So Sharperlight was founded by 3 directors who were part of a core development team back in the early 90s for Q&A Sun Systems. And Q&A Sun Systems was one of the first BI applications to harness live database access using Excel add-in. So the team of pioneers in this space really sets us apart from the competition. And I'd also say, being local in Australia is a huge advantage and a vote of confidence for our Australian network, as we can be involved in those technical presentations if needed, depending on the size and who they are. Across the board, we have 38 active resellers with 25 different data models. Data models for us are what we call a connector. So main connectors being SAP B1, Sun Systems, BC and Wiise. And also I did mention KeyPay and there's MyObXO and other ones that we integrate with. As a business, we integrate with 4 different OEM partners. Okay, so what are we? Look, to set the frame before we go into the demo will sort of answer, I think, a lot of your questions. But look, everything we do, as I mentioned at the beginning, is with performance and ease of use in mind. Based on competitors such as Jet, look, we've seen some reports that took 60 minutes in Jet versus 60 seconds in Sharperlight. And that's absolutely, no word of a lie. And this has resulted in us converting a lot of direct opportunities over with customers. Also seeing a drop not only in price, but just substantially such better performance when we've benchmarked it. We're more than just a reporting tool. Ultimately, right, it is a self-service client, which has been designed for non-technical users, and that's that user-friendly aspect. We have a unified and drag and drop experience for quick and easy customized reporting within Excel, or giving you the ability to build that query in Excel and push that same query through those presentation layers, such as a web browser, where you can add those dashboards or those security layers as a business requires, depending on the size and access levels. So this opens up massive amount of consulting opportunities for the partners to build those custom reports or build those report packs that you want to deploy across multiple businesses if it's in one vertical, or build those custom branded landing web pages with all the reports and interaction. So look, the development tools, I probably don't have time to go into them right now. We'll touch on them a bit later. Now, to bring it together, sort of as I was talking about, look, with how it came together and how it connected, this is a really high level overview. It's really agnostic with the way it functions. So the way it works is we generally refer to Sharperlight as the framework can plug into multiple database sources, no matter the location. So whether that's on-premise or connecting to an API, this really opens up the playing field from reporting from different systems live in a single query or in the one worksheet. Being able to report from MyObXo or Wiise in that one worksheet live is really critical and great for reconciliation or migration, which we'll go into during the demo as well. Now, another big advantage is the benefit with BC is we can connect to multiple tenancies across Wiise or BC and consolidate not only multiple tenancies, but companies within those tenancies as well. So it's critical. You can have a Wiise tenancy connected or a BC, it does not matter. Once connected, some of our data models are bi-directional, and this really gives you the ability to be able to reallocate journals to different cost centers or departments, via Excel with an upload. You could write back sales orders or invoices in bulk, or you can even migrate that ERP, as I've already mentioned, with configured load sheets to Wiise, increasing efficiency of migration. So it really can really increase that efficiency of that migration. And look, it can be more profitable when moving a customer across just because of how quick we can do it. We actually migrated ourselves from AX to BC using Sharperlight ourselves. Now, a data model, as I said, refers to that connector. It's a logical table structure. And this is where a non-technical user can pick up Sharperlight and they can begin reporting in minutes. It's very easy because these relationships are predefined and mapped using our developer studio within Sharperlight. So this helps any non-technical user with no underlying schema knowledge to be able to begin reporting in minutes. And I guess that's what sets us apart from something like Jet with its ease of use. So from there, this is when a user can query, a single application or multiple applications into one query. And push that into the presentation layer, as I've mentioned, in this web browser with landing pages, dashboards, etc. And pushing it across Excel, Teams, Power BI as well is one of the connectors that we've got, which comes included in the product to be able to import that query to take that technical work away from those users as well. And I guess this is what really provides that unified experience. We're going to kick into the demo now. So look, I hope I've given you a little bit of an overview of how it comes together and who we are and what we are. But we put the demo into 3 buckets, which Donald's going to go through the technical demonstration. So we'll go into reporting, which we're going to cover some basic and intermediate concepts, including the bi-directional functionality and some ways that you can get consulting out of Sharperlight, which is that sort of cross-connector reporting, the migration or building custom tables. And then we'll do a touch on development. But I think in the final sort of part of the webinar, we're just going to talk about what it takes to become a Sharperlight partner, as it's free. So we'll go through that.
It's good to see those names that everyone recognizes, and it's also a great story to sell itself that yourselves used Sharperlight to move from AX to BC. Yeah, great. Can't wait for the demo.
That I will do a fairly concise little run through, and we'll talk about the reporting side. We'll get into a little bit of the sort of capabilities of the consulting tool, and we'll talk about a little bit of the development side. I was just going to start off with, I was going to show you the configuration screen we have where you can actually connect to multiple tenancies. So you can have a whole list of different tenancies. So they can be BC or they can be Wiise tenancies. You can have different regions. So a lot of our customers in the UK, they have a US, they have a UK, and they have like a European, Spain, France tenancy, and they're reporting across all of them. And in fact, in some cases, they're consolidating across them. So one of the key sort of tenets of what we do is that we bring the data from Wiise and synchronize it into a SQL Server database. So whether that be a SQL Express database or a SQL Enterprise database or a SQL Azure database doesn't really make any difference to us. But we synchronize the data and we're reporting over that synchronized version of the data. And you can refresh that. We've got a scheduling tool that can refresh it every 15 minutes, and you can kick off refreshes anytime you want as well. So we'll just start off in Excel. So Excel is one of the popular interfaces that we have with Sharperlight. It provides people who've already got an Excel-based skill set a way of easily accessing data and seamlessly bringing it back into Excel. Obviously, you can see there's a Sharperlight Excel ribbon. And what I'm going to do is dive straight into it, and I'm going to build a query. So I've clicked on an icon. I'm going to create a formula here, or a query formula, and I'm going to select the connector. So you can have multiple connectors loaded. I'm actually going to use the MyWorkso one a little bit later, but I could dive into the KeyPay one as well. But in this case, I'll do the BC, which is a BC Wiise one as well. And I can select my tables. So I've got a list of all my companies in this case here. And then I've got a list of all the tables within this connector, this data model. Now, in this case here, I'm just going to link it to the underlying sheet. So this is a query in Excel that I'm going to link to Excel. And I've got some filters pre-filled on my sheet. Do that. Do that. And I'm just going to drag a couple of fields out. Just preview it. So I've just got a little preview pane, and obviously I could go back, I could modify the query, I could add more filters. It's all very much drag and droppable. If I wanted to filter based on the dimensions are all listed there, so they're all pretty much accessible. If I'm happy with it and I now want to deploy that into my Excel spreadsheet, if I hit OK, comes up and says, would you like to give it a name? I'm just going to take the generic name. And in this case here, what it's done, it's created a query formula up in this top corner, and it's created this table. So that is an Excel table, which is being populated based on this query formula. And that query formula is linked to these filter cells. So if I was to go up here and let's say, for example, change the account number. So I'll do, let's say, change that. Hit OK, you can then see that it's recalculating and refreshing the data. So like any other sort of formula that you would have in Excel, if I change the input parameters, it's just automatically refreshing and recalculating it. So we traditionally use automatic recalculation in Excel to kick off that refresh of that data. Now, I've returned it into an Excel table. And like anything you do in Excel, a table, I could put a chart over the top of that. I could do a pivot table over it. What you can also do, which is very much Sharperlight specific, is you can drill into that table and analyze it further. So for example, in this case here, if I wanted to drill into it based on, let's say, for example, customer code, and then I get a slice of the information there in this Explorer interface. And if I then wanted to drill into that again, let's say I'll go down to the details. I'll do posting date, description, and maybe I'll output that. Okay. So that is a detailed drill. So the data model provides both a reporting layer, a way of interacting with it and building reports. It also defines the structure where you can drill into it and analyze it. So drilling in it like here in Excel, so you can have a report and you can drill into it and you can look at the data pretty much on the fly. What you can also do is you can have these drill to links where you can click on it, it'll go back to the related page in Wiise. So those sort of little drill points are percolated in the data model in logical spots where, oh, I'd like to go back, and you can have that, you can just output it and go click, and it'll open it straight away. So that is what we call Explorer. This interface is the Explorer interface, very much designed around the desktop in Excel and building stuff, as a slice and dice tool in Excel. Now, the concept of these query formulas, so in this case, I built a table. We have multiple different styles of query formulas. And one of the ones which is very popular is the value formula. So in this case here, I'm going to do pretty much the same sort of query, The difference here is that I'm actually going to make it a value formula. So I'll just output the amount. Just drag that down.
Oh, yeah.
That one has no formula in it. So you get the same balance, you get the same drill down capability, but it's a self-contained formula in its own right. And the table is good for bringing out chunks of data. The value formula is really useful for building unstructured reports, like maybe financial reports, or you can bring out balances from different systems, or you can bring out actuals and budgets and things like that in cells right next to each other. So the value formula is very useful for people building financial reports. Okay. There are other types of query formulas that we provide. So going beyond just using the table and the value formula, we've got different formulas where we can just list data out. So in this case here, this is a list report. It's just bringing it out and it's generating subtotals. Now, one of the things you lose with a table in Excel is you can't do subtotaling. So we have our own subtotaling mechanism. So if you do a list formula or the sheet formula, which is another one, it'll actually generate those subtotals for you. In this case here, I'm filtering it based on my customer names or customer group names, but I'm also outputting and filtering it and splitting out the columns based on the customer groups. So in this case here, when I output it, it doesn't just bring out a singular amount column, it pivots it and says, okay, produce all the columns that relate to my customer groups. So that sort of capability is built natively into the Query Builder. And there's a lot of things that we do natively in the Query Builder, which kind of people look at it and go, well, historically you'd have a report designer and then you'd have the query tool. Well, we combine the two together. So the query can work both in Excel, but it can also work in the web as well. And a good example with this is an aging report, 30, 60, and 90 days. The whole aging concept is done in the native query. So I can set multiple filters. So I want that band to be 30 days. And the output column, I can bind to it and actually say, well, apply that filter to this output column. So that query, though I've got it in Excel and I'm charting over the top of it, I can do it exactly the same way in the web if I wanted to. Okay, so different styles of reports, reports with grouping, so we can use the Excel grouping. That's just one of the other things we can do. We can also do financial style reports. So in this case, an income statement or a balance sheet. These style of reports are predominantly done using value formulas, which is pretty much what this one is all set up to do. So it's doing actuals and budgets. In this case here, I've also got these nifty little formulas on the side, which we call them helper formulas. And these formulas allow you to automatically suppress 0 rows. So at the moment, I've got it to show the 0 rows. And if I switch it over, so it's automatically going to hide the 0 rows. And if I was to recalculate that sheet and there was a balance in there, that row would then suddenly appear. Because we're not deleting the row, we're just changing the row height. We make it conditionally and just make it available again. So this is a key element which people like with Sharperlight, that flexibility that they can do quite rich financial reporting in Excel if they want to. Now, stepping out a little bit, a lot of the functionality that we have in Sharperlight, certainly in Excel, is reporting, different ways of presenting it in Excel. One of the other things that we can do is Sharperlight with Wiise is bi-directional. So as well as pulling information down, we can actually push information back. So in this example here, I've got a couple of value formulas here. So I'm just bringing out the balance of the account. And over on the side, I'm doing an Excel calculation. So I'm doing a reallocation. I've got costs that have come in here, and I want to reallocate them based on different department codes. Now, I can do the calculation in Excel, and traditionally people would then go, oh, okay, well then I'll open up the journal screen in Wiise and I'll enter it. Whereas with Sharperlight, you can have what we call a write back. So this write back template, the template for the table is part of the standard data model, but you just define where the cell references are on the underlying sheet. And what it'll do, it'll scrape the information from the sheet and turn it into rows that are effectively your journal lines. Now, if I gave it an invalid account, it'll throw an error. If I structurally did something that it was missing a field, it'll give an error. So it won't let you go any further until you've provided all the required information. But if I'm happy with what it's doing and I hit execute, it goes away and actually writes that into, so it's just written that information. And if I jump back, actually I had it open here, if I dive in here, they're the journal lines that I've just created with the department code. So that's my reallocation. Now, from within Excel, I can load that. I can also post it at the same time. So I don't actually have to go back into Wiise, look at it and post it manually. I can automate it, so I can kick off a post. So load it and it'll actually post it automatically for you.
That's great.
Now, that sort of capability means that if you had standing journals, so, you know, maybe you're loading something every month, you can have something like this. You can have the same template, so it's exactly the same style template, and you can reuse it and you can just say execute it. You go to your next sheet and that different rows, but structurally still the same. You can execute that, and at the back of it, it just posts it. So loads the rows, posts it, loads the rows and posts it. If there's an error, so for some reason there's a validation that we haven't picked up, it will return that error message into this little logging window for you. And more complex sort of writebacks, as we call it, are possible. So we also support sales documents and purchase documents. So sales quotes, orders, invoices, credit memos, and purchasing as well. So these have the same sort of paradigm. So you define the sheet underneath it and you map it and then you load it. It's got the same sort of validation concept. So it looks at the data and says, oh, hang on a sec, there is no location called red. So it'll tell you that. If I was to then load this, it will send it back to Wiise through the web, through our web service endpoint, and it'll validate it again. And if there's an error, it'll return that message there. Otherwise, it'll actually post it into your sales order or your sales quote, wherever you've defined to send it.
Which is great, because there's points where there's multiple tables like that, and that you couldn't do that out of the box. That's really good.
Exactly. Now, the element, so Excel is popular and very useful, but we have the broader scope that we can have reports and we can make them available on the web. So this query here, if I just take that out, so that's almost identical to that query there. The difference with this one is that I have built some drill paths natively into the query. So instead of having to actually select my criteria, I've defined it and I've said, this is how I want to drill on this data.
Preset.
Now, preset. Now, the presets are great in Excel because you can just click on it and you can open it. In the web, they really take on a life of their own. So you can take that query, like what I'm doing here. I can save that as a new query, and I can then view that query in a web browser, just while it loads, and I view this. And now I have a web version of that query that was in Excel. And the drill throughs are sitting there in the web. So there's my little drill through, which I would get equivalent in Excel, but this has been set up so I can open it up in a web browser because it's a purely browser-based interface. And I've got those little drill links. So I could click on that and I could then jump back and open it up in Wiise. So that's all possible. Through the web interface, you can present it as a table, you can present it as a chart. There is a web version of the query builder, so you can modify queries in the web browser. So I could actually go in and actually tweak the structure of this and change it however. So you're not tied to doing it all natively. You can do that in a web browser. You can take that query and put it into a dashboard. So there's multiple different ways that you can actually consume that information. And if I just very, very quickly here, I'll just open up a dashboard. So this is a Sharperlight dashboard tile. And then I can just add that data set. So just dump in here, grab that one, go click. I'll just output it as a bar chart. And there we go.
Which is great, so that people can see how quick you can actually make it like that.
Yeah. So a query, and now that's a web version of the query. So there's no relationship to what it was in Excel. It's now a separate self-contained web-based query. The standard connector we provide with Wiise has a number of existing pre-built reports, which allow you to do financial reporting. So, you know, simple, like a balance sheet, a web-based balance sheet. So these are pre-packaged with, and in some respects, they're a starting point. So people can actually build reports. They can look at the structure and play with that, with the drill throughs and things like that. And this kind of touches on the area where you can start extending it with consulting services. So an end user can take it only so far based on their training, whereas a consultant can actually push it to the next level. They can build a comprehensive web interface, multiple dashboards, help the customer build tiles and things like that, and web-based reports. The other element of consulting, and I'll just close out of this and jump out of this and jump down here, is the customer will come up with reports which are completely out of kilter, as in they're not straightforward, they're not immediately obvious sort of reports. Like this example here, item activity by customer. This is an example where somebody wants a report by item, but they want to see even items where there's no activity whatsoever. So it's not an immediately obvious sort of query. It's a slightly sort of different beast. So one of the things you can do with Sharperlight is you can build what we call custom tables, because we're creating a SQL Server database. So the tables in there are self-described. You've got the fields. You can put your own bit of SQL over the top of it. Now, you can grab a bit of SQL and add it into Sharperlight, like here. So in this case, a custom table has got its own little screen, and you can define a table and you can drop in a snippet of SQL. Now there's some control tags, as we call it, to allow it to go across multiple database schemas and filtered by the company and things like that. But this sort of stuff generally is a little bit beyond the native user, but it opens up a really broad spectrum of the sort of reporting that a customer can do, because a consultant can come in and say, you've got a specific requirement. Yep, I can do that. Native SQL, and I can turn it into a custom table. That custom table will work both in the web and in Excel, because for all intents and purposes, we just treat it as another object in the data model. And it's just throwing a dummy on that. So this sort of element is really quite popular. Then the other side of consulting, and I guess based on what we've already looked at with the write back, so you can use Sharperlight to pull information from systems like MyOp. You can dump that into Excel, and we've got the write back capability. So let's say, for example, I get my list of customers. Now that is a list of customers out of MyOp Exo.
Yes.
So I'm just pulling them straight out as a query, dumping it into Excel. I then create a write back over the top of it, where I'm actually grabbing that data and saying, okay, well, I want to load that to this company, Motor Parts, which is my Wiise company, and I'm going to take that data. Now, because you can do that with reference information and journals and opening balances and things like that, you can have a sheet or a workbook with multiple sheets, and you can set it up so that you just go from sheet to sheet to sheet, refresh it and load it, refresh it and load it, and refresh it and load it. Even down to, you know, in this case here, it's pulling out my sales quotes out of Exo.
Yes.
So these are sales quotes which have not been processed yet. They're just purely quotes. Even I can do the same with purchase orders as well. So these are purchase orders that have been entered but not posted in Wiise sort of terminology.
Yes.
It's a different sort of status. And then opening balances. So opening balances and then current transactions and things like that. The interesting thing here is because you can have multiple sheets, you can also with Sharperlight have a running table that says, okay, these are the sheets, these are the write backs, and you can click on this, it'll go from sheet to sheet and it'll go to that sheet and run the write back and go to the next sheet and run the write back. So you can get it all set up, you can kick this off, you can walk away, you can have a coffee, you can come back for almost 4.5 minutes later and it's loaded that complete environment.
Now, I don't want to understate the importance of this, Donald, because this is a key thing that is continuously requested and wanted inquiry on, because what you've basically set up here is a way to be able to retrieve the data, be able to give viewpoints, and then be able to schedule how it published backs into Wiise. You're doing the translation for the customer and the partner, as well as setting up the logic so that it can be reviewed on multiple points. This is brilliant. Yeah. And those timings, those elapsed times are amazing.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things is that people who are using Sharperlight as their migration tool, they do test migrations, you know, they do it multiple times.
Yes.
Because it's so quick to do it. And they're going, oh, we just want to tweak a few more things. And they do it again. Oh, can we change a few? Yeah, okay, no problem. So you do all that over a couple of days, you know, multiple, because it's so easy to delete a company, recreate the company, and then just load it again and again. And then the users can play around with it. So that the customers get a better fit to what they want. It's not a case of we can only do 2 loads and that's it. With this, you can do multiple loads. And in a lot of cases, the customers can be involved in what you're doing because it's still just natively Excel.
Which is key.
Yeah. At the end of it, you can then have reconciliation reports which compare what you've loaded with what was actually in the old system. So in this case here, I've got a cross-check report where I'm querying out of what I've put into Wiise, but I'm doing a sub-query out of MyObXo. So it's pulling out the balances. So theoretically, I should have a one-to-one balance. And if you can see here, you know, most of it balances, but like if you've ever played with Exo, quite often the control accounts are a bit out of balance sometimes. So in this case here, I've got a classic example where it's out of balance. So I've set it up so I put the difference into a suspense account. So it all balances. And then the accountant can actually look at it and go, well, why is it out of balance? And they can do an adjusting journal in Wiise. So there's no point trying to go back and fix it in Exo, fix it in Wiise, move on.
Well, that's exactly it, because I think any partner that's watching the session today have been in that situation where they've had that day scheduled for their opening balances, everything's lined up, and then 2 days later, the accountant says, this doesn't look right. Being able to have a page like this is amazing.
So this sort of concept of being able to sit over multiple systems, allowing you that sort of free access to it. And I'll just open up the query builder here and just illustrate. So I'll just open this up. Okay, well so in this case here, I've got a KeyPay query just sitting there. So pulling information, or KeyPay or Wiise Payroll, you know, basically the same product under the bonnet. We do the same thing. We create a synchronized copy of the database so we can do interesting things with it. For example, I can run a query that splits a pay run over a month. So the query automatically does the splitting for you. So in this case here, this goes over a month. It's actually splitting the line so you can see the pay run for the previous month and you can see the proportion for the next month. So rather than the native report that doesn't do this proportionate, Sharperlight's actually doing that as, in this case, this is a custom table that we've done over KeyPay. But getting back to what I was then going to say is, and this gets back to the legacy reporting mindset, is you don't need to migrate all your historical data if you don't want to, because you can still have Sharperlight over the top of your historical data. So if you've got 25 years worth of data, leave it in the database, and Sharperlight, you can have it over the top of that. Sharperlight is supplied, and when you install it, comes with the development tool that we use to build the connectors. So we call it the Studio. So this is the development tool. It's attainable for certainly a consultant, but we have a lot of end users who build connectors and data models themselves with minimum sort of training. There's a number of other interesting tools within the suite, which allows you to do more sophisticated sort of development. The Studio is probably the preeminent one. The other one that I would draw your attention to is what we call materialized query. So sometimes you have situations where you need to take a snapshot of the data and you don't want the data to actually change. Materialized query is exactly what the name suggests. You can materialize a data set and you can then use it over and over again. So it's like a data mart builder. It's part of the standard functionality in Sharperlight, but it allows you a lot of flexibility in building data sets, which you can then build reports over the top of. So a materialized query is just another data model.
Out of the box.
Out of the box functionality.
There's a couple of scenarios based on what you just said there that this is key for. I mean, I know a couple of the partners on the call right now, and I've been in those conversations where a discussion of how can I get the reporting across Wiise Payroll and Wiise viewed in one place, let alone the other scenario you posed where someone has been working with a government department and they have 15 to 20 years of data that they technically have to keep in that old environment. They can't move it across. But they still want to be able to report on it. That's another great example of where we could use this, and let alone the fact that you're putting that capability through Studio and Materialized in the consultant's hand.
Chris, we have 16 local government departments, and I'm on a project at the moment where we're archiving 6 systems, 3 of them HR, 2 finance, because they thought it would be a good idea to start moving to a new platform. So it's, I see it's common.
Exactly. And that's even without the idea that it's a project, right? Where they have, let's say, multiple legacy systems, like let's say a couple MyOb Exo environments set up, and they're taking it as a phased approach. We'll move this one to Wiise over this period. They still need to do consolidated reporting across that period. And this is a great example of how there's a system that can facilitate that. Donald, this is brilliant.
Okay. The last couple of things that I would also mention is, so the scheduling tool we use to synchronize our reporting database, that's part of the standard product. It's actually on the menu there. So it's already pre-configured to actually work. The scheduler can do a lot more, but in this context around Wiise, it's very targeted in synchronizing those sort of databases. The other interesting thing about Sharperlight is, though I'm running this all in a complete virtual environment, it is designed to run through the internet. So in the last 2 years, a lot of our customers, because they're working remotely, they originally installed Sharperlight to run in a local network. And then they said, we've got all these staff working from home. Can we configure Sharperlight to do that? We're like, yes, because it was designed to work that way. So we've got some of the most remote mine sites in the world where the people from head office run reports out of the data that sits on the mine site, and they're doing it all through the internet securely. So it's very, very lean, and it lends itself to that remote connectivity, which works perfect with a cloud-based solution. So that pretty much covers everything I wanted to discuss. I think we could probably open it up to questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Donald. Anybody have any questions, please feel free to send them through the message chat. All right, guys, please send through some messages. I can see that 2 of you have sent texts to me during this session, so feel free to post it in the conversation as well. One text question that I have is it just MyOb Exo? What other systems can they move data from?
So SAP Business One, Dynamics GP, AX, Nav, Solomon, if you might be so inclined, Infor Sun Systems, and then we have a smattering of different ERP systems that we've built. We've built connectors, but we wouldn't class them as commercial connectors. So they've been built to cover maybe just the GL and the sales order or the purchasing inside of it. And then there are a whole load of other systems that we have connectors for, like Salesforce and Maximo, which are non-ERP, but they're opportunities of connecting to other systems around it.
Perfect, thank you. I can see that we've got another couple of questions. How difficult would it be to bring in external data from a medical PMS, for example?
Wouldn't be that hard to do, given the fact that we're already doing it. So there's a couple of systems we've we've integrated with previously, but generally what we try to do is get it into a relational database. If it's not already in a relational database, if it's cloud-based, we pull it down from the cloud, have a relational database, and then we can interact with that. Having a local database means it's a lot faster for reporting and analysis, and it's just a case of synchronizing that data. So
very good. Yep. Any more questions?
It is free to be a
Please.
partner, as we do with a lot of our Wiise and BC partners and SAP partners. If you need assistance, and generally at the beginning you do need assistance, just because obviously you're not fully trained, but we take that opportunity to help you present to the customers and assist with those demos. And I think assisting with the early implementations can be a really good use of training and recording, to get you up to speed as quick as possible. So we can help there. And look, if it's a really technical presentation and you need a hand, we do help. So we assist where we can. In terms of onboarding, we do basic, intermediate, advanced, and we do development training if that's something that appealed to you today. But yeah, we can cater for, I guess, specific training is always the best, practical training and use cases rather than sort of the broader training. So yeah, and look, as Donald did mention through the presentation as well, look, based on partner feedback, we'll update the data model. If you see something that's going to work for your Wiise customers, we can put that in there and add that as required. And we've done that with a number of different partners at the moment. We've done some heavy feedback and updates from Glasswall down in Tasmania and Matisse over in Perth, where they were the Matisse were the big drivers behind that multi-layered sales order, sales invoice right back. So yeah, and look, all of the resources are online. So there's self-learning and training and over the years what we've published. That's it.
Very good. Very good. Thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time out of your day to jump in this session, contribute through the questions, and learn more about how Sharperlight can work with Wiise and how yourselves can partner with Sharperlight. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to either post them through the Partner Center. You'll see the recording of this session as well as the info pack available there. Plus, feel free to ask your partner account manager for an introduction, either via Carl, your programs manager, or even just directly to Jeff and Donald here, and then naturally we can find those first couple of test cases where we can basically try and create a couple of customer success stories with you.
Hey, one last thing before you do go.
Please.
Look, we do offer free 30-day trials for any client. So of course, depending on if you want to sell it, it's up to you if you want to put a 30-day trial in. But yeah, we offer them to any of your clients. We could offer them to all of your clients. It's no problems.
Excellent. I think we are on the dot. Thank you very much, Jeff, and thank you very much, Donald, for the session today. It was brilliant.
Cheers. Thank you. Thanks, guys.